Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sunday Wire. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. What we were going to talk about this week was really the fact that it looks like all signals are pointing to a war with Iran, a resumption of the conflict. That's what it looks like. That's what all the evidence suggests. It's an educated guess based on the signals. And of course, the United States doesn't move all of its military assets into the region for nothing. And that's what they've been steadily doing over the last couple of weeks during this so-called ceasefire. That's what we were going to talk about, and also just sort of the demise of the president. Donald Trump and the administration is just hitting a wall. There's no question about it. And then, as if by magic, something happened last night in Washington, D.C., which we're going to cover anyway, which was what we're going to call at 21st Century Wire. Buckle up. It's the Daily Shooter is back. This was a Daily Shooter event. There is no question about it. And if you watch our program and you follow 21 Wire and the work we've done over the years on mass shootings and false flag terror attacks, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This was 100% a Daily Shooter event, and we'll break down why and how. The most important thing is don't get distracted by all of this propaganda and understand that there is a war afoot. The United States is not done. Israel is not done. Before we get to that, let me just point you to our website here. This is the Sunday screening this week. Again, this is curated by our editorial team at 21 Wire. We do a documentary film. We feature one every week for our audience. This one is called Hormuz, the Story of a Strait. This is a beautifully shot documentary film, so you definitely want to check this one out. This is, again, up on our website right now. If you go to the features section, you'll see the Sunday screening. And this is the theme of today's show, which is war theater. So everything you saw last night in Washington, D.C., at the White House press correspondence dinner, okay? This is an annual event. It's like a tradition in D.C., where the press come and a comedian's hired and they roast the president and everybody has a good chuckle. And it's just one of those things that, you know, a chance for Washington to, as the British would say, take the piss out of itself. And it's all done in good humor and stuff like that. But Trump is taking this to a new level. Now, you have to remember, this event was, in his first term, was canceled most of the time, or it never happened. I don't know if it happened last year or not, but they just canceled the whole thing. And I think because the press was just so hostile to Trump, he just couldn't take it. And so anyway, he's got it now, but now he's got control of it, and it's a Trump-produced event. It's a Trump-produced event. So we're starting to see what that sort of theater looks like. And so everything you see in Washington, everything you see is basically this. It's theater. This is war theater. This is the best way to describe it. This is prepping the public for the next phase, the next crisis, the next wave of the crisis. That's exactly what this is. This image, just what you're seeing here with from left hand side or to the right, J.D. Vance, the vice president, Kash Patel, then Donald Trump, and then I think this is Mark Wayne Mullen. It's a very strange name, Mark Wayne, like Mark Wayne, one word, Mark Wayne. Mullins, I think he's the DHS secretary, absolutely psychotic. And then I think on the end you have Todd Blanche. I think it's the assistant or interim FBI director. He looked very uncomfortable, by the way, during this whole production afterwards. So there's supposedly a shooting in the White House, or not at the White House press correspondence dinner. This was at I think the Hilton Hotel or something in Washington, D.C. There was supposedly somebody stormed the lobby, managed to assemble a gun in the lobby in front of everybody, and then just started shooting randomly. And of course, they tackled him and they've charged him. And you have a type of a narrative that's building here. They say another assassination attempt on the president. Next to the Butler, Pennsylvania event, and then the Mar-a-Lago event, which really wasn't an assassination attempt, though they found an operative linked to U.S. intelligence who was hiding in the bushes, Ryan Ruth, I think his name was, who's very involved in recruiting mercenaries for the U.S. government's proxy war in Ukraine. But anyway, put that aside. Nothing to see here. Move along, and you have this shady event. So this is called a show of force. Okay, look at this. The theater for the cameras. So after this so-called shooting, Trump just basically lackadaisically says, "Oh, by the way, there's a shooting tonight, and this is a great job by the FBI, our law enforcement. I've rebuilt the FBI and I've rebuilt the military." He turned it into kind of a bizarre public relations kind of junket event. Very strange. And then this is the show of force, though. You need everybody standing up there in front of the camera. We'll show you a clip in a minute. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, are they going to blame this on, was he inspired by Iran, the shooter? I don't know. I'm waiting for whatever the narrative is going to be. There's probably going to be a few different versions of this story that the media will float out just to kind of get the public, because the public's in a kind of a soft psychological state. That's just part of this, how they execute these theatrical events, is that they sort of plug it with propaganda. So you'll see one sort of, pro-MAGA account say, this was an Iranian-inspired shooter. And then you'll see another one saying that he was a Democrat and he was a liberal. And you'll see another one saying that he was an anti-Semite, or whatever. You'll see all these various conflicting reports from influencers and even in mainstream media sources. And eventually it will settle into one narrative. And then, who knows what the story is behind this alleged Daily Shooter character. We'll show him in a few minutes. But anyway, the big story is, and again, don't take your eyes off the ball, folks, okay? The big story is there's a war on, okay? And this is a president that's failing miserably in selling this undeclared war of aggression, which has been a disaster for the United States economically, politically, geopolitically, and militarily. On every front, it's a defeat, massive defeat. For this president, for this administration. So he's really having trouble selling the next wave of this war. So he's positioned all the military assets. We'll show you those in a minute. But in terms of getting buy-in from the public, it's a total failure from Trump. And Israel is completely out of the picture. You notice how quiet they've been. Netanyahu has been pretty quiet. And because the polling in the U.S. is that the majority of Americans have had it up to here with Israel. That's what the polling showing. Trump knows this. Netanyahu knows this. So they're doing the smart thing, just keeping a low profile. But they still have to do this war. Israel wants it. The U.S. Government wants it. Trump wants it. So they still have to somehow get this war through. They have to continue this war. You're not interested in a ceasefire. The ceasefire is fake. Okay, the ceasefire was to buy time to reload, rearm, and prepare the next wave of attacks and brace themselves for Iranian retaliation. That's what this was for, quite obviously. Because who called for the ceasefire? It wasn't the Iranians. Usually the losing party begs for a ceasefire. Now, here's the president, and I'll bring this up on stage here. This is the president himself. This is what he has to say, and we'll show his statement here. He's just off the airplane here after sort of, struggling down the stairs like Joe Biden. I mean, watching Trump on Air Force One is pretty scary. Okay, this guy is in geriatric mode, the likes of which, well, very much Biden-esque in his.
We heard that we canceled the trip. We have all the cards. We're not going to spend 15 hours in airplanes all the time going back and forth to be giving a document that was not good enough. And so we'll deal by telephone, and they can call us anytime they want. Again, we have all the cards. They have no military left, practically. They have no leaders left. We don't know who the leaders are. Nobody knows who the leader. I don't think they know who the leaders are, very importantly. So you saw.
Okay, this guy is just too much. Okay, everything he said there was a lie. Okay, If you hold all the cards, Donald, then why did you beg for a ceasefire on April 8th? Hmm? Iran wasn't asking for a ceasefire. You wanted a ceasefire. You hold all the cards. You wanted a ceasefire. You don't know who the leaders are. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's the only thing Trump said that's true is he doesn't know who the leaders are. He doesn't know who the leaders are is because his advisors keep telling him that the leader is like some guy that Steve Witkoff's talking to on the phone who may or may not be in Tehran but could be a potential leader for the future, like some curveball Ahmed Chalabi type character. Might as well be a used car salesman from New Jersey who's Iranian second generation. And the U.S. will just say, that's our guy. He's Iranian. He's our Juan Guaido for Tehran. He's our president. Parade him in front of Congress, guys, like you did with Juan Guaido. And just say, wow, that's our president. Just find some Iranian guy from the tri-state area. Someone who sort of is a loose acquaintance of like Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner or something like that. Anyway, it's beyond a joke. It's hard to take this president seriously because everything that's coming out of his mouth is complete balderdash. So he's going on about we hold all the cards. That's why you begged for a ceasefire. Okay, that's fine. If you believe any of this coming out of the White House right now, he doesn't know anything about Iran. He thinks that their Air Force was destroyed, their Navy was destroyed. Well, if their Navy was destroyed, how come you can't control the Straits of Hormuz? Because you must hold all the cards, right, Donald? Well, you don't. Your Navy wasn't destroyed. And as I will show you, their Air Force wasn't destroyed either. Surprise, surprise. Nor was their missile capability, not even close. So this is a panic right now in Washington. They do not know how to proceed. And not only that, to make matters worse, the U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf, and there are many of them, are destroyed. They're gone. This is the worst defeat after World War II. This is the biggest defeat in United States history, more than Vietnam, from a geostrategic point of view. Okay, and I'll show you exactly how. So this guy's trying to sell, and the media that back him are trying to sell a catastrophic failure as some kind of a victory. And he'll just sit there and lie through his teeth to the press here. I mean, it's ridiculous. So anyway, it's all theater. So again, he's trying hard to sell. Still got these old talking points. Iran can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. They never had a nuclear weapon. They weren't developing a nuclear weapon. Your own intelligence assessment from the DNI, all the U.S. agencies, 18 U.S. agencies that cost the taxpayer collectively something like $300 billion a year, quarter of a trillion or third of a $1 trillion. They said they're not developing, haven't been developing. They abandoned their nuclear weapons program in 2003. Okay. So, but he's still pushing this talking point because that is what the Israelis have told him he needs to do. Okay. So those are the talking points. And this is this same fake WMD. It's identical to Iraq. Iraq was predicated on a fabricated weapons of mass destruction narrative. The government just blatant, the press was in on it, blatantly lying to the American people about weapons of mass destruction because they think that will horrify people in the West enough to get them to back this shady war of conquest in the region on behalf of Israel, by the way, the Iraq War. Israel and Netanyahu himself lobbied for that war for years. Eventually they got it. They've been lobbying for this one for decades, and now they've got it. And again, it's a fake weapon of mass destruction, in this case, nuclear weapons narrative that's being pushed onto the American people by a government that's clearly lying. Every bit is, in fact, more. They're more pathological liars, the Trump administration, than the Bush administration. Pretty much you can put them in the same league, but the outlandishness of the lies coming out of this administration are quite phenomenal because they're having to lie on every level, militarily, economically, and politically. They have to lie on every single level, whereas the Bush administration didn't have to contend with all these other problems that have been opened up because of this disastrous war. Anyway, that's Trump trying his hardest to basically sell a pup to the American people and to the world. Unfortunately, nobody's buying it. That's the problem. So there's Trump trying to sell this thing. So let's take a look at how this is actually shaping up in reality. So the United States have brought their third aircraft carrier to the Middle East. The latest addition is the USS George H.W. Bush, arrived in the Indian Ocean, according to U.S. CENTCOM, alongside several guided missile destroyers. And that's the one to pay attention to because they're going to be busy. The guided missile destroyers are going to be busy and mostly doing air defense. Okay. And by the way, this is named after a president that shot down an Iranian passenger airliner and refused to apologize. The United States shot down Iranian Airlines passenger airliner and killed everybody on board. And George H.W. Bush refused to apologize for it at the time. So, Americans, if it makes you uncomfortable that, some Iranians at rallies are saying death to America, what they really mean is death to the American regime. They hate the U.S. government. This is why. And then they've named an aircraft carrier after this guy, George H.W. Bush. So, just look at the optics, folks. Anyway, USS Abraham Lincoln, it's already there. It's just loitering in the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. And they're supporting the enforcement of illegal U.S. naval blockade, which is an act of war, which is another reason why you're not going to get any negotiations from the Iranians. And then the USS Gerald R. Ford Strike Group, that's in the northern Red Sea. I'll show you the details of all of this. Okay, so that's the other lie that Trump was attempting to do there. When you saw him in that last clip, he's saying, we're not going to send Steve Witkoff and our negotiators. I mean, it's just kind of a joke, as you know, that his son-in-law, who is basically a charlatan and a con artist, Jared Kushner, and then Steve Witkoff, another charlatan and a con artist, two Israeli assets, effectively, are being sent to Pakistan as negotiators, and they send the 41-year-old vice president who doesn't know anything about anything as to kind of give it an air of legitimacy. That's the basic package. And so Trump's setting up a narrative here, which is that, I'm pulling off my negotiation team. We don't want to waste any time with these Iranians. They don't know what they're doing. Vance was basically echoing the same lie because that's what he was told to say. But the reality is Iran never sent a negotiations team. That's what Trump won't say. He's creating a fake straw man talking point. It's the same as the nuclear weapons claim. Okay, Iran can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Well, they're not developing one. So what are you talking about? So he's making it sound like that's the problem, and that he's reacting to that. And the U.S.'s position is justified. That's a classic straw man argument. That's a logical fallacy. That's a kind of low level straw man argument. Is what sort of high school level. That's the level Trump is operating on. It's kind of high school straw man debate tactics. Not very sophisticated. But anyway, so he's saying we're pulling our negotiations team out. Another straw man argument. Iran wasn't sending anybody to negotiations. They refused. Why? Because they don't want to waste their time. So he's saying, again, every accusation is a confession. Whether it's listening to Israelis with their sort of talking points and propaganda, or Trump, and they're indistinguishable at this point. But so he's saying we're not going to waste our time because they weren't prepared. But actually, the U.S., when they went to Islamabad last time, they didn't do any preparation. That's what the reports confirm. They just showed up, looked at the Iranian document, said, hold on, we can't make a decision. We need to call our boss. Benjamin Netanyahu. And Netanyahu says, no, 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 cancel the deal. We'll just pack up and leave. And then they accuse the Iranians of not having agency and that Iran didn't send real decision makers there. That was an accusation by J.D. Vance. It was actually a confession that he had no agency, J.D. Vance, that he was on the phone to Trump a dozen times, who was micromanaging his every move. He couldn't make a decision. He didn't know what he was doing. It's an embarrassment, but it's also insulting to the public, who are actually, anybody with an above room temperature IQ could kind of work out these basics. And they think that the public, and of course, if you're talking about the Fox News, MAGA, what's left of MAGA, by the way, all the intelligent MAGAs have peeled off. They're gone. Now you're left with the Fox News, Newsmax crowd. And I'm not going to use the epithet of low IQ that the president is using so often. And I'd like to see Donald Trump's IQ tested. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? If the president had an IQ test. I mean, the results would be very interesting, let's just say. But anyway, they're accusing all these things of the Iranians, selling it to the American people and hoping you're stupid enough to sort of swallow it. But anyway, so the president's basically trying to create a narrative that he has a good deal and the Iranians are refusing to bargain. Therefore, it justifies a war. That's basically what he's saying. So we'll bring this back up on screen here. So they're assembling the military assets. That's very clear. Okay. Now this is expensive. It's risky. It's putting a strain on the what's left of the resources of the U.S. military. And there's no guarantee of success. Well, they believe there's a guarantee of success, but they have the last munitions here. We reckon that this is probably one. I think the strategy here by the U.S. to me is pretty clear. The strategy here is probably all out missile. They'll empty what's left of the missile stock in terms of JASSMs and cruise missiles in the first week. And that's it. Done. No more. Global stocks, non-existent. Okay. If they do, they'll have to basically empty stocks from every other theater around the world. And they're in the process of doing that right now. But they still need more time, and they may or may not be able to pull it off. So they reckon they have about a week's worth of missiles and bombs that they can do at standoff munitions at a distance to keep safe distance away from Iran so Iran can't hit back. And then they believe that they'll have weakened Iran to such a degree they'll be able to do bombing campaigns after that with aircraft. And that would be impinging on Iranian airspace, if not flying over Iran. That's week 2. Okay. So what it looks like to me is it's a 2-week campaign. This is a last-ditch, desperate effort by the president, basically. And we'll just give you a brief. We'll just give you a brief. Sort of. This was done by Al Jazeera, so we're gonna show you this clip and then comment on it. Okay, we're gonna give some critique on their analysis and comment on it. But this is basically what they are sort of proposing here, according to these analysts. Which I'll give you my critique of this, but this is what they're saying.
So confused. Let me simplify this further for 2 carriers working together. From midnight to noon, the U.S. Abraham Lincoln owns the darkness. This is the night shift. The Lincoln, a veteran of the Nimitz class, relies on her experienced air wing and battle-tested steam catapults to hammer targets under the cover of night. For 12 hours, she launches wave after wave, but as the sun climbs high, her shift ends.
Okay, so we're talking about this sort of tag team operation here with these various carrier assets here, and then they'll move on here, and then so we're into sort of the main part of after the first few days or after the first week, the bombing phase.
Launch system. She generates a higher tempo of sorties, launching raids when visual identification is easiest. She's faster, more efficient, and relentless. The result is a suffocating embrace. The Lincoln haunts the night. The Ford dominates the day. Between them, they ensure that for the adversary there is no safe hour. There is only the noise of the next launch. But with two carriers, the Navy unlocks the continuous strike doctrine. As stated, the Lincoln owns the night, the Ford owns the day.
Okay, so they're talking about 24-hour strikes and bombing. So this is the plan, basically. It's exactly what they're shaping up to attempt to do here. No doubt about that. And so I think they're leaving out a few things, but I would say that this White House probably hasn't factored in a lot of the other extenuating risks that they're going to face, which is that it's pretty clear, and even U.S. experts have admitted Iran hasn't used all of their capabilities. They still have. That was an admission this week, which I was shocked to hear from the U.S. military planners, to say that Iran hasn't quite expended or used all of their military cards, if you will, on the battlefield. So that will be interesting. So that's the analysis they're giving. So let's put this into perspective. I'm going to bring this back, bring our presentation back here. Okay, so you got these three main strike groups here. So this is the U.S. carrier strike group. So right now in position, previously, you look in the upper left-hand corner, you see the USS Gerald Ford. That was in Greece in dry dock getting repairs because of what looked like to me and others a mutiny on board. Sailors setting fire, sabotaging the aircraft carrier, so it basically wasn't seaworthy. It's been deployed for it's a brand new aircraft carrier, state of the art. Been deployed for 300 days. It's passed the world record for the longest U.S. deployment. There's a reason they don't deploy that long, because these are massive boats and require so much in terms of maintenance, even the brand new ones. So the strain on the crew, the ship itself, is just too much to bear. So the U.S. Navy, in certain ways, coming unglued. Down here, lower right-hand corner, USS Abraham Lincoln. They're just on the edge of the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, keeping a safe distance from Iran, approximately 1,000 miles away to avoid becoming a target itself. Obviously, if the Iranian military is obliterated, why don't they just park it right up next to Iran? Well, they won't. So that's how you know that's a lie by Trump and Pete Hegseth, claiming that the Iranian military is obliterated. It's clearly not. They're scared. And so if we look at the update on this, we'll bring this in here. So now we have the Gerald Ford has been repositioned, and I'll bring this a little bit larger so you can see. The Gerald Ford's been repositioned to the northern Red Sea. You'll see that in the sort of upper left-hand corner of this graphic, that little carrier there. It's not little, but just for the graphics point of view, it's a smaller looking carrier on screen, but these are all the same size. That's northern Red Sea. Why the northern Red Sea? Two reasons, which we illustrate here. One is that the Houthis are still posing a threat to the Americans at the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. That's the bottom of the Red Sea. You can see Yemen controls that opening. Very key strategic waterway. And so that's why this aircraft carrier is being kept at a safe distance. The other reason is, in the event of U.S. hostilities, Iran has promised that it's going to hit Gulf oil and gas facilities, energy production, and so forth. So Saudi Arabia then becomes a target, okay? And the port of Yanbu, which I've outlined there with the little red dot, Yanbu, that's the east-west pipeline used to bypass the Persian Gulf Straits of Hormuz. So that's the main lifeline for Saudi's economy right now. Iran could easily hit that. The Houthis, what the West call the Houthis in the media, which their real name is Ansar Allah. They've already hit Yanbu before. So they have the ability, even with their older drones and rockets, to damage and disable the Yanbu port in Saudi Arabia. And certainly that's going to be on Iran's target list. And Iran has the missiles that would just basically take that whole operation out. And that's 2 million barrels a day, roughly, completely off the market for Saudi Arabia. They'll be in big trouble at that point. So I think the Gerald Ford and also the destroyers in that strike group, because there'll be at least two destroyers and frigates that will be flanking and protecting, as well as submarines, protecting that carrier group. They'll be used for anti-aircraft or anti-missile defense. They'll also be deployed to protect Israel. So I think that's why they're in that position right there, to protect Saudi and the Israeli assets. And if they can't loiter south because of the Houthis and the fear the U.S. have of the Bab el-Mandeb. Now, we know that's the case because if you look at the USS George W. Bush there, that just arrived on the picture there, okay, they had to go all the way around South Africa to get to that position, past Madagascar, all the way up, and then they're still loitering at a safe distance here, probably a lot lower than where I've got them there, okay? And why didn't they just go through the Red Sea? No, they had to avoid the Houthis, you see. So isn't that interesting? So that's kind of more proof that the U.S. didn't defeat Yemen last year. And of course, you still have the USS Abraham Lincoln. So that's what that picture looks like. So that's our sort of analysis there. Big thanks to our team for putting this graphical map together. We could animate that, by the way, but for the purposes of today, we'll just show you the still frames on that animation that we created there. So anyway, that's kind of how it looks. So you've got these three carrier strike groups, and they're going to be exposed. Okay, they're going to be exposed. They will be targeted one way or another. There's only so much they can do at that distance. They're going to rely heavily on air-to-air refueling for U.S. jets to fly sort of round-trip missions. So it looks to me, and again, this is just my guess, that they need three carriers, because what they'll do is certain F-35s or F-15s or what have you that will be in the second wave after the standoff munitions are expended. Then the fighter bombers that are taking off of those aircraft carriers may be also, they'll be able to fly their mission, refuel over a friendly jurisdiction like Jordan, for instance, or something like this, or Saudi Arabia, and then land on another aircraft carrier potentially. So we could see some sort of teamwork, if you will, between these two carrier strike groups in order to close the distance on this. Nonetheless, there's huge logistical problems involved. And these problems are compounded by some other realities. And those realities have become clear in recent weeks. And by the way, this is coming at a time when the U.S. Secretary of the Navy, John C. Fallon, was basically fired. They say he resigned. I think he was fired or pushed out by Pete Hegseth and the neocons, okay? And it's probably because they wanted to change the rules of engagement to enforce this naval blockade. In other words, fire on any Iranian ships, be they military or commercial, board them, seize them, basically piracy. So the U.S. Navy has become a pirate. It's become a privateer, pirate force working on behalf of a foreign government, in this case, Israel. So that's what the likes of Trump and Hegseth have reduced the United States to. Military is basically a for-hire corporate mercenary force for the Israeli lobby, is effectively, and the U.S. taxpayers paying for it. So we pay for it in blood and treasure, and the Israelis get it for free. So this is their war. It's not the U.S.'s war, but they've made it the U.S.'s war. And the people supporting this president still, if there's any left supporting him, they're totally on board with this agenda here. And again, more receipts here. This is exactly what happened when they sacked the head of the Navy. Trump orders U.S. military shoot to kill Iranian small boats choking Straits of Hormuz. That's clearly what this is about. They said, oh, this admiral or the head of the Navy, he didn't want to build the golden Navy. Everything's golden with Trump, the golden dome. The golden age, the golden Navy. I mean, he's just obsessed with gold. I mean, shades of the golden calf, for biblical lore. Moses wasn't happy about that. obviously, when he came down from the mountain. But shoot to kill orders, yeah, get rid of anybody in the U.S. command structure that opposes this. And yeah, because it goes against U.S. law. It goes against U.S. law and international law. That's right, U.S. law. That means the U.S. has adopted the Geneva Conventions and the laws of war. It's been ratified by Congress under the Supremacy Clause. The United States government has. So that means it's the law of the land. So Donald Trump says, "Well, we don't respect, or we don't have to recognize international law. All that matters is what I believe in my gut." Okay, what Donald Trump believes in is a gut that's filling itself with McDonald's and Little Caesars pizza. That's what he eats, and DoorDash. That's what's feeding Donald Trump's gut, so we can all rest in the confidence of knowing that this stable genius has got no issues intellectually and psychologically, whatnot. So why is this more of a problem? What I just showed you is very shaky. This new war plan. Why? Recent report here. Iran caused billions in damage to U.S. military bases in the Gulf. These are reports from NBC, also recent revelations in the New York Times as well. So initial damage that was caused by U.S. This is interesting here for Hegseth. U.S. base camp Bushring in Kuwait by an Iranian F-5 fighter jet in the first few days of the war. Well, we were told that in the first few days of the war that the United States basically wiped out the Iranian Air Force. Well, clearly they didn't totally wipe out the Iranian Air Force, because the Iranian Air Force was wiping out U.S. bases, believe it or not. So this interesting admission here by the mainstream media. Okay, what else have they lied to us about, the American people? Who knows? Could be endless, that list. So that's there's that, and this is an interesting part here. These are the U.S. military bases used to attack Iran. Okay, now you've got the blue dots, you've got the red dots here, and you've got the sort of light blue dots as well. So what we learned from this is that a lot of the blue dots around the vicinity of the Persian Gulf, those have been evacuated. They're uninhabitable. The Iranians wiped them out. Do you realize the scale of this as a military defeat? That the White House doesn't want to talk about it. The press are so tight-lipped about this. That the United States lost the use of up to 24 military bases and facilities in and around the Middle East as a result of starting this war alongside Israel against Iran. So they've given up their entire geostrategic footprint in the Middle East, except for Israel, and maybe Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey, and that's borrowed time right there, as well as the base in Jordan, which also has been targeted by the Iranians and probably will be wiped out in the next wave of hostilities. Plus, Djibouti becomes a target. So if you look at this map, the bottom blue dot there, if you look closely, that bottom blue dot, that's sort of Djibouti. Okay, that's the Horn of Africa, and that's within range of Iranian missiles, by the way, and that's a game changer. You can't see Diego Garcia, but it's quite a ways south. I think you'd just be able to see it. Let's see if we can. There we go. You see that red dot? The bottom, we're taking our ticker tape off. The bottom red dot there, you could say that's Diego Garcia. Okay. So the red dots are the key. That's what we're going to look at. A lot of these other blue dots have either been hit or compromised over the last couple of weeks and months. Okay. So, but I want to focus on the red dots because that's the real story here. And that's what you have to be worried about wherever you are. And I'll tell you why. And here's why. Okay. So but just think about that. All of that was needed to mobilize an attack on Iran, an attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran. All of those dots you see, blue and red, all of them were required to mount military strikes on Iran that A, failed to achieve regime change, number two, failed to defeat Iran militarily, three, failed to somehow break the international support for Iran. So, and also has destroyed the global economy and is severely damaging the U.S. economy. So all of that's required, and they did not get any success. Not only that, they lost all of the U.S. military bases in the Middle East, almost all of them, are either unusable or uninhabitable as we speak. And they'll never be able to be rebuilt or re-inhabited by U.S. forces. It just won't happen. So with all of that imperial massive footprint, they couldn't get a win against this one country called Iran. Look at that. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. Let's zoom in on Europe. Okay, so they relied heavily on those red dots in Europe. Okay, now some of those red dots fall within the sort of, they could say, the current range of Iranian missiles. You could say those would be Greece and Cyprus, namely, because of the size and scale. We couldn't do precisely pinpoint accuracy here. But I would say we could put another red dot in Cyprus as well, just off the coast of Israel. But that's a light blue dot there. You can see the Eastern Mediterranean if you look down the lower part there. But that's still Europe. Cyprus is part of the EU. So the UK, Germany, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, Romania, okay, Eastern Europe, or let's say Kosovo. They can't fight this war against Iran now because the U.S. has lost its footprint in the Middle East. And now it needs Europe to attack Iran. They couldn't have done it without the British, the Germans, the Italians, the Portuguese, the Greeks, and the Cypriots, and the Romanians and quote Kosovo. It's not even a proper country, but anyway, they needed them. So think about that. Now you got a big serious conversation here. Iran fired back and hit all of those Gulf countries that were hosting U.S. bases. You didn't see much pushback, really. A few people complained about it, Western governments, and horror, Iran's hitting back indiscriminately. No, it wasn't indiscriminate, and we know it. They had a right within the laws of war to retaliate against the source of aggression, and the U.S. was using its bases in Saudi, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, was using their presence in all of those bases, and Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan, using all of those bases to mount attacks, an illegal war of aggression against Iran. So Iran's within its rights to retaliate. By the same token, listen closely, by the same token, Iran is within its rights to hit the U.S. bases in Italy, Germany, the UK, and Portugal. So at that point, Britain, Germany, Italy, Greece, Cyprus have to admit that this was an illegal war of aggression launched by the U.S. and Israel against Iran, who was negotiated in good faith, trying to find some way to appease the U.S. empire, which is a waste of time, and the Israeli empire, the U.S.-Israeli empire, if you will, in the region. And so Europe is a party. There are belligerent European countries that host U.S. bases. They're launching long-range bombing runs, attacks, doing all the sort of coordination, the signals intelligence. It's all done out of the main hub is Germany. But all of these European countries, including the UK, Germany specifically, and Cyprus, and Greece, and Italy, that Iran could retaliate with, if they had the range of intermediate range or long range intercontinental ballistic missile, they have a right to hit the source of aggression in those countries. Do the governments and the leadership in these countries in Europe realize what they have done? They've turned their populations, just like the Gulf Arab states, by becoming accessories to U.S. war crimes, have subjected their own populations to become targets in a war that people living in these countries have really nothing to do with, but their governments that feel they have to bend the knee to the United States and allow them to be used as a military lily pad for any war anywhere in the world, are drawing fire to their countries in Europe, potentially. Now, they could have done what Spain did, which is deny access to the U.S. to use Spain as a way station or as a destination to be involved to attack Iran. That's what the Spanish did. So the Spanish did the right thing. It's the only NATO member or EU country, one of the only ones that has a brain, that hasn't become completely brain dead and vassalized to the U.S. And this upset Trump so much, he's attacking Spain. Tariffs, trade embargoes, he's declaring them an enemy because Spain wouldn't support an illegal U.S. war. They're an enemy of America, according to Trump. Okay. But do you realize that this is just a question of technology? And are you confident in Europe that Iran doesn't already have that range? Are you confident? Because they would be within their rights under the laws of war, as they are in the Gulf, to strike European countries. Now, you want to avoid that. If you're a European country, if you're a British government or a German government or Portuguese or Greek or Cypriot or Romanian government, you'd want to avoid, or Kosovo, not even a real state again, but it's basically Kosovo is a glorified U.S. military base. That's the reason why they broke up Yugoslavia, because the United States wanted to put one of their largest military bases in Europe. They wanted to carve that out of a sort of fake state called Kosovo. Anyway, that's just academic at this point. But do you realize you have a choice? You could either not allow the U.S. to use you for this war, or you can just say, go ahead and use us, and we're just going to look the other way, like nothing's happening. But what happens when something happens? Who are you going to blame? Are you just going to go to war behind the U.S. and Israel and say, oh, we've been attacked. This outrage cannot stand. Rally the troops. Rule Britannia. I mean, I can't imagine the Murdoch tabloid press, how they would sell that. Instead of looking at the obvious, which was you had a chance to basically stop this early on, but instead they were complicit. The European countries were complicit. So they are parties to a war crime. And if there's retribution coming their way as a result of this from the Iranians, but it's not just retribution, it's trying to eliminate the source of the threat, which is what it's in their right to do that. So these are like legitimate questions that I think intelligent people should be asking. But then again, so there they are. Key European bases. Look up on screen. Take notes. Involved in the Iran operations. Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Who knew Hitler would be proud? Known as the key hub for the C-17 shuttles operating between Europe and the Gulf. And then Israel's using the civilian airport as a military airport now, Ben Gurion Airport, for all the U.S. C-17s and refueling in Israel's Ben Gurion Airport right now. So Israel's using its civilian airport as a human shield. Okay? So NAS Sigonella in Italy, a critical base utilized for logistics and surveillance aircraft in the Mediterranean, and Suda Bay, Greece, used for naval and air support. And of course, Cyprus goes without saying. Cyprus is basically being used for all the link ups with NSA, GCHQ, Israeli intelligence, Israeli signals intelligence. Cyprus is the main Middle East hub for signal intelligence. Also, it's the escape valve for Israeli aircraft, or the president or the prime minister Netanyahu, when he needs to escape, he uses Cyprus as a sort of safe escape hatch. Okay, that's a European, an EU country, Cyprus. So deeply, deeply, deeply involved. So anyway, that's the layout, folks. So, looking at these guys, and so it doesn't look, it's not looking great. Okay. It's not looking great. And I'll add one more thing, and then I'll get down to the interesting bit, the daily shooter bit that you guys are all waiting for. What you have to understand is that the damage to the global economy and the US economy by this ridiculous, disastrous war that has seen record US military losses in terms of equipment and bases, nothing even close. What you're seeing right here, the damage caused by this, is already baked in. If they signed a peace treaty tomorrow, the force of hyperinflation is already in motion, and you're going to suffer this through to 2027 if it ended today. But according to this president, it's not going to end today. The Israelis will not allow the U.S. to sign a peace treaty. In fact, the Israelis will do anything to nudge this president towards a war. Anything to discipline the president, to make sure that this White House is heading in the right direction. So that's a reality. That's a reality. They cannot resolve the futures market anymore because there's only so much oil and gas that's available. So you're not going to be able to suppress those future prices anymore. So the futures market will soon reflect the material reality of the actual supply available in the market. In other words, your gas in America is going up to $6, $7, potentially $8, $9, maybe higher dollars per gallon. And that's going to create inflationary force right across the entire economy on every single goods and services in America. And this is right across the Western world and the global economy as well. It's already happening in Southeast Asia. It's already happening. So it's only a question of time. So that will leave this president with only one option, which is a massive bailout, probably for the banks, and they'll have the banks buy U.S. treasuries and whatnot. They'll do another 2008 or COVID-style bailout and try to suppress inflation that way before the midterms. Wait and watch. It's coming. They're going to have to do it anyway. Even if it ended today. This is what a disaster this war has been. These people are talk to you like they know what they're doing, like they've thought this all out, and that they're on the winning side on this, and it's somehow going to all work out great. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. This is a failure on multiple fronts. And right here, you're seeing this guy will go down in history as the worst president in the history of the United States of America. There's no doubt about that. The entire history of the country, him and all the clowns that he has assembled around him, will go down as the worst administration in the history of the country, and the one that fast-tracked the collapse of the U.S. empire and the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency. Everything that he did ended up accelerating the demise of the U.S. That's already a fact. There's no way it can be rescued. It can't. And even if they wanted to, they don't have the people with the competence to change the situation. They just don't. You've got grifters, charlatans, sort of ignoramuses, people with like suspect high school level educations like Steve Miller and other people, all sorts of opportunists that are orbiting around this, just basically getting fat, trying to carve up the fat of the calf while it's still there. because this party is going to be over very soon. I predict this president will be forced out of office by hook or crook. I don't know how that's going to happen. It could be some kind of a mental episode that just makes his presidency untenable. That his own people will have to get rid of him, take him out under health reasons. Take him out of the White House and say, "Oh, there's because of health reasons, the president has had to step down temporarily, and it'll become a permanent thing." Or there's going to be a military coup in the U.S. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, there's not a lot of options left. I don't think they're going to get the votes to impeach him, although they could be able to impeach him. Maybe the rhinos, the Republicans, will have to throw him under the bus. Even the warmongers will have to get rid, because this guy is such a train wreck that he's an existential threat to the United States as a country. I'm not exaggerating. The economic deprivation that's coming as a result of this guy's slavish adherence to the Israelis to do this war. And this is going to be very bad for the Israeli lobby in America. The time clock is ticking on their reign over American politics, and they will head for the exit eventually. They will become so unpopular because they're going down to the bottom. They're chained to Trump. That is a giant anvil, historically speaking, that is going to the bottom of the historic ocean. And the Israeli lobby is chained to him. And all of the surrogates, the Mark Levines of the world, and all these other sort of blowhards, they're going down with Trump. So there's no good ending. There's no good ending. So the Israelis will do anything to nudge this president back towards war. And so that brings us, and again, we'll go into more detail about this in the Overdrive segment. So if you go to our archive at 21st Century Wire, we've been chronicling mass shootings and false flags, and we call this the Daily Shooter. Okay, if you go to the Daily Shooter files, put that in the search bar, the Daily Shooter files. Put that in, you'll get our archive on all of these. We've been covering these and analyzing these sort of unbelievable phenoms, political phenoms, for like over a decade, probably since 2012, 2011, you could say. And a lot of that's propaganda analysis, of course, but problem, reaction, solution. So that's the Daily Shooter. So what we saw at the White House press event, I mean, it's such a bailout, isn't it? And you see the scene here. Everybody's there. All the millionaires have assembled. They're all on their cell phones and tweeting about this. Oh my gosh, there's been a shooting. Well, not really. Not in the ballroom, of course. But Trump's White House Correspondents Association dinner with the press turns into a night of tears and terror. Okay, tears and terror. Really? Well, let's look at the traumatized president, if we must. Here's the traumatized president after the so-called shooter was apprehended. Here's Trump, basically turned it into a Dean Martin celebrity roast for like an hour. And the comedy skit on this, I don't know if they're going to, I mean, it's sort of like, because this is marketed as an attempt on the president's life, that a lot of people in the press, even Saturday Night Live, will be probably encouraged to not make fun of it, because somehow that would be insensitive. So they use that Trump as the victim. But here's Trump and his team immediately after this so-called shooting. They basically turned it into a sort of public relations event. Watch.
We looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different.
The military have wanted the ballroom for 150 years. Like, what on earth is this guy talking about? Completely incoherent. Drone proof. So we need a drone proof ballroom in the White House. Like, what is this really about? Or is this or is this about the private command bunker being constructed underneath the ballroom? Is that what this is about? A separate command center. Is it, what is this? A private center? Is it privatized? Is it separate from the normal? Because they do have lower levels under the White House. They do have a bunker under the White House. They do have a tunnel system in DC. But is Trump constructing something else here that's not really going to be, that he doesn't envision that's going to be for use for everybody other than him or his, quote, his people? That's a question worth asking, is what's being built under the ballroom here. But he's turned this shooting into a type of a marketing event for his, what a lot of people are calling a pink elephant project. And he's making up all these stories how the military wanted the ballroom for 150 years. It's just ridiculous. But that's just par for the course.
Because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before.
So why do we need levels of security? What's he talking about? No, he's saying he needs levels of security. He needs levels of security. There's a president that's starting wars left, right, and center all over the world, that's attacking people domestically, that is sending armed paramilitary Gestapo force known as ICE and executing Americans on the streets in broad daylight in Minneapolis multiple times. So he says, I need protection now. So he's doing all these illegal, unconstitutional things, attacking the American people, attacking innocent countries overseas, and he's crying, saying, I need more protection. That's kind of the narrative that you're seeing here, actually. Okay. So this scene is just ridiculous with the dinner suits. I mean, this is literally Dean Martin's celebrity roast. He's making cracking jokes up there. I mean, if you saw the whole press conference, if you can sit through that and stomach that, you're a better man than I am, because I couldn't handle it after. I tried for about a half hour and it was just too much. It's just ridiculous. It's such theater. And they're trying to create a crisis moment. It's very clear that that was the intent, okay, of this whole production. And let's bring the basics back up here on screen. So what else are we looking at? Oh, here's the Daily Shooter. We'll talk more about him in a minute during the Overdrive segment when we take a break. Shooter identified as 31-year-old school teacher Cole Allen. I am so shocked and appalled he doesn't have his middle name put in there, like Cole David Allen. You know, it's always got to be three names with these mass shooting events or these assassination Daily Shooter type events. Cole Allen. So why not Cole Michael Allen or Cole Christopher Allen? I don't know. You need three names. Otherwise, it just doesn't work in the media. But anyway, he's from Torrance, Southern California. That's down by Orange County, which is, by the way, a conservative stronghold. I just point that out. Orange County, OC. Even though it's in California, it's probably the most MAGA place on the planet, probably. Suspect emerged from a, quote, makeshift room. Very interesting. A makeshift room. Near the entrance, where there was no security, next to the bar equipment storage area, according to the New York Post. So let's get this straight here. Just get the logistics straight. And I'll just finish this off. He was in that room, according to one witness. He grabbed the gun or guns out of his bag or something, a long gun rifle, and it didn't look like a typical gun. Okay, that's interesting. So what happened here? Did he bring a gun through security? Because normally, if it's a presidential event, the security will be outside the building. So you can't even get inside the building unless you go through metal detector or something like that. There'd be like a perimeter or something. Or did he come into the building with a gun, and then the metal detectors and security barrier was further in the lobby before you get into the function rooms? If this was at the Hilton, I guess. Which is it? So it's either A, they didn't set up their security properly, or B, he was allowed to come in and, according to this witness, assembled his gun, put his gun together in front of the witness in this lobby reception area, and then proceeded to load the weapon in front of everybody and then fire off random shots before he made the sort of bull run towards the ballroom, at which point he was, of course, tackled by Secret Service and subdued and target neutralized. Which is it? It's just bizarre. Who is this guy? Okay. Who is this guy? So let's look at the actual scene here, and so we'll show you the moment that we're told the shots rang out here. We'll bring this up. This is I'll comment on this, but watch. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but like, what's the point of having all of these special forces and TAC team outfits, and you can't even stop the so-called guy from coming in off the street and assembling a rifle in front of everybody and then loading it and then like firing shots off? Not even in the ballroom here. The shots didn't come close or near where they are. But what's interesting, let's look at this again. And notice how quickly they evacuated J.D. Vance. And then it took, in my count, 15, 20 seconds for them to actually get the president out. They quickly took Vance out, but then left Trump there. Now, is that because Trump can't get up and walk because he's got gout or whatever? He's got some problems physically or whatever. He's 80 years old. But I somehow it just seems odd to me. This is, watch this again. There's Vance. Quickly, there's it. He's gone. And then Trump, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, 6, 1,000, 7, 1,000, 8, 1,000, 9, 1,000, 10, 1,000, 11, 1,000, 12, 1,000, 13, 1,000, 14, 1,000, 15, 1,000, 16, 1,000, 17, 1,000, 18, 1,000. So it's about, I missed a few seconds at the beginning. And then, of course, there's the Special Forces guys there, slightly overweight. I guess those are Secret Service. Lots of equipment, but what the hell are they there for if they can't even secure the building? What a waste of space these people are. But anyway, I found that to be interesting. See, J.D. Vance, quick, out. Got to take care of him, but leave the president there. Donald Trump's just like taking it in stride. It's like, oh, well, another shooter. So I guess Trump fell down there. He tripped or something or rather. I mean, how many people does it take? But anyway, there's just something weird and very strange about this whole scene and the way that the sort of theatrical production that was sort of tacked onto the back of all this, and then all the narratives that were pumped into the conversation afterwards. It's just weird, to say the least. But if only the weirdness stopped there. And of course it didn't. And well, just as a side, and again, this is unconfirmed, but this kind of turned up online afterwards, and they're claiming here, just doing a zoom in on the shooter here, this Cole Allen, supposedly his name is, that he's wearing an IDF sweatshirt, Israeli Defense Forces. So this was apparently on his Instagram before his profile was removed. So this is another thing you see now with daily shooter events, as we call them, is that the social media accounts are quickly removed so the public can't see anything about the alleged assailant or shooter. So the Charlie Kirk story, which just it becomes increasingly improbable and weird. You saw this there, and plus with a host of others. So, is this true? Was that indeed on his Instagram profile? If it is, then obviously we have a massive story here. If this is potentially AI generated, or it looks pretty authentic, and how it's subtly hidden in this picture says a lot. So who is this guy, Cole Allen? Is he half Jewish? Did he serve in the IDF? Of course, that would change the whole conversation, right? If you're talking about, grooming somebody for something, who is his handler? What are we actually looking at here? The theatrics behind this, the political motivations behind this, who might be involved? Just saying, and we'll talk more about that on the other side. But so that's these are all like questions surrounding this. But if only the weirdness ended there, and of course it didn't. So minutes before the event, here's Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary herself. Basically, maybe this is just a coincidence, but it was just so weird. Listen to what she says here. And they're saying, what can you expect about this great event? They're just, it's before the event starts. It's all part of the media hype here. And here's Trump's actual press secretary describing what people can expect at this great event.
Is he not?
He is ready to rumble. I will tell you, this speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room. So everyone should tune in. It's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
I love it all. And you wrote most of it, you said.
I can't take credit. In true Donald Trump fashion, the man puts his pen to the paper himself. So it's a lot of his own work.
To rumble, is he?
Oh, we just can't wait. So shots will be fired, says Caroline Leavitt. So maybe it's just a coincidence, of course, but I mean, kind of poetic in a way. But I thought that was interesting, But, if only it ended there. If only it ended there. And so that's the first one, but it doesn't end there, unfortunately. It continues. Now, this is I think a Fox News correspondent who was on site, and her name is her name is Aisha something or rather, and so she's calling in as Fox is giving coverage on this, and they're asking her, what happened, what went on there, and she's going to give her. So she's on the live link right now from the Washington Hilton when I show you this clip. And what she's saying is Aisha Hassin, or Hassani, Aisha Hassani. Listen closely to what she says here. She was talking to, I believe, that woman you just saw there, I just played, saying shots are going to be fired, Caroline Leavitt. I think she was talking to her husband before the event, and he said something strange, which she's trying to relay here. And then Fox, realizing these damning comments, cuts her off mid-sentence. You can be the judge for yourself, but listen closely to this. I find this to be quite interesting, but here it is.
Quickly tell you, I was sitting next to Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary's husband. He was one of our guests. He was seated right next to me, and right as the dinner was starting, the national anthem happened, and then he kind of leaned over and said, I watched you on TV, you do a great job. You need to be very safe. And he was just very serious when he said that to me. And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some.
Sounds like we lost Aisha's phone there. And this happens, by the way, especially when you have so many people attempting to utilize the same cell service at the same time. I did want to add this. While we had a moment, I was just reading.
So totally normal, this sometimes happens with our correspondents. We lose. So overwhelming cell service in Washington, D.C. I mean, there must have been 100 or so or a couple hundred people on their phones. Overwhelmed the cellular service. I mean, can you believe that? So she said it right there. She was talking to Caroline Levitt's husband, and that's a Fox News contributor or, on the ground beat reporter or whatnot, Aisha Hasni. And she said, you got to be careful. She's look around this room and blah, blah, blah. So what exactly was she going to say there? We'll never know. And she will either disappear from Fox or she will never comment on this ever again. Or it'll be interesting to see what her workaround story is for this. Because she was just cut off on air by her own colleague. I mean, that's like pretty clear. And we'll just listen to that one more time. And just for thoroughness, listen again.
Tell you, I was sitting next to Caroline Levitt, the press secretary's husband. He was one of our guests. He was seated right next to me, and right as the dinner was starting, the national anthem happened, and then he kind of leaned over and said, I watched you on TV. You do a great job. You need to be very safe. And he was just very serious when he said that to me. And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some.
Sounds like we lost Aisha's phone there. And this happens, by the way, especially when you have so many people attempting to utilize the same cell service at the same time. I did want to add this.
Happens all the time. Come on. Anyway, make of it what you will. We're just basically showing things that are out there. And obviously, everything I've shown you has caused media storms already. Social media is on fire right now. By the time while this program is happening now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So, we're just basically here to, share with interesting things that are being done and said here around this event. So that's what we're doing. Read into it what you may. I've got a few other, interesting and choice things to say. We're going to break and join our teammates in a minute. Probably a shorter overdrive segment than normal because we've gone overtime here, but we didn't expect that there was going to be a Daily Shooter event last night. And we're going to have a very interesting conversation. But as a feel-good story, just to prove to you that we're not all about negative stories and that we do have positive stories as well. We have an uplifting clip, which we're going to play. I think it's going to make everybody feel a lot better. And this should put a smile on your face, whoever you are. You'll agree that this is definitely a heartening and heartwarming video clip from an old dear member of the political community here.
In a fight, I need your help. I hate to say this, but I've been outraised twice by Democrats. Please go to lindseygraham.com and help me if you can. I've been with President Trump at every step. I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee when we did Kavanaugh. You remember that. I've been there with him. I think he's been a great president. He makes us safer. He makes us more prosperous. The Democrats have money. I don't know where they're getting all this money, but I need your help. lindseygraham.com. Please help me if you can and help my teammates. When my primary is over, I'm going to help the whole team. But we're going to get this war right. Structurally, Iran has been decimated. When it comes to fighting Democrats, we need to up our game.
We're going to get this war right. We promise. He's admitting that the war is a disaster and his support base has collapsed in South Carolina. It is wonderful to see the sheer terror on this man's face at the fact that he might be losing his grift, which is this job he's been able to hold down for a couple of decades, where he's done absolutely nothing but show for war, death, and destruction around the world, and do so on the U.S. taxpayers' dime, basically, subsidizing his lifestyle, his trips to Disneyland. I mean, literally, this guy goes to Disney World and hangs out at Disney World by himself, which is strange. But anyway, he is terrified. That is a look of terror right there on Lindsey Graham's face. He's watching it all slip away. So I think, whoever's running against him, whether it's in a Republican primary or in the general election in November, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or a Green or whatever, you should be backing the candidate that's running against this man, against Lindsey Graham. That's who you need to be backing. Okay. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be a head of lettuce for all we care. It could be Mickey Mouse himself. We need to donate to those campaigns and back them, because this guy needs to be sent to early retirement and in Tel Aviv. They'll probably gift him maybe a beachside apartment in Tel Aviv where he can be there for all the colorful festivities they have in the month of June and July there in Tel Aviv, on the beach there, the parades and all that. That's where Lindsey Graham needs to be, not in the U.S. government. So anyway, some people might take pleasure in watching him panic and sweat and having to go on TV to beg for money. I mean, this is what these swamp creatures are like. That's all they care about. That's all they've ever cared about, is the next election cycle. That's the only thing that gets them interested in anything. And you can see he's prioritizing here, and he admitted the war is a disaster, which I find hilarious. We're going to get this war right. We're going to get this war right. Honestly, it is something else. Anyway, we'll be back in a few minutes, and thank you for joining us. And again, like and subscribe this show, The Sunday Wire, and 21st Century Wire on Rumble, on YouTube, or wherever you're listening to us. Hit the notification bell on X as well, at 21 Wire. If you're watching, we really appreciate it. We need all the help we can get. We're going to break now, but awesome track coming up, which we are promoting right now. It's called Eyes Wide Open by the Real Anthem Band. And, I was talking to this band just yesterday, and they're sort of previewing a couple of their new tracks that they've got coming out. I mean, this is a really serious project, and the people behind it and their lead singer, Sean specifically, they're doing incredible work, and they're creating all their own video and graphical material as well. But the music is incredible. He's got some really good write-ups, mainstream write-ups for their these new tracks they've released, which we've Heaven Come Down, Eyes Wide Open. So it's pretty incredible. So we're going to continue. So if you like this track, this band, there's a link in the show description to Bandcamp. Go there and get the track. Pay the $1 or whatever it is, $1.50 or whatever. I'm not sure how much the track is. It's not a lot of money. And then follow them on that Bandcamp link. So support. These are independent artists. These are friends of the show. So some of the best musical artists out there and friends of this show. They need your support. Hit that link, get the track, and follow them on that independent media platform, Bandcamp, which is for artists and for independent artists. So they get everything that people do in terms of purchasing tracks and whatnot. But just help this one go up the charts, because I think this is a banger. We'll see you guys in a few minutes with our teammates on the other side. I'm Patrick Henningsen. You're listening and watching the Sunday Wire here at 21st Century Wire and the AlternateCurrentRadio.com. We'll see you in a few minutes.